As Americans are heading to the airport to try and get home, the Airbus A320 is making some headlines. Let's cut through the hype and sensationalism and find out exactly what's happening and what it means on taking off. Hi, I'm Dan Milliken, and I hope you're having a great holiday. I've picked up a cough and a cold, so I apologize for the voice. We'll power through it. As I was traveling home from the Middle East yesterday on board an Airbus A350, word was coming in of massive problems for the A320 fleet. Let's take a look at what exactly is happening and if it really will have a dramatic effect on travel this holiday season. We'll examine the problem and what the fix is, and we'll look and see if will it really cause the massive travel disruptions. First, the Airbus A320 is a narrow-body plane equivalent to the Boeing 737, a smaller domestic, usually, workhorse airliner. The main cabin has a 3-in-3 configuration per each row and can seat between 150 to 182 passengers depending on the configuration. It has 2 engines under the wings, and the plane was launched by Airbus in France in the mid-80s and has now a wide variety of models, including stretched versions like the A321 and shorter variants like the 318 and 319. 15 years ago, Airbus announced the A320neo, or new engine option. In the U.S., American Airlines is the largest operator of the A320 with just under 500 airplanes, while globally, Indigo is the second largest with just under 400 A320s. And between 2 Chinese airlines, they account for a whopping 720 A320s. Okay, now to understand what's going on right now with the Airbus, it's important to have a clear picture of how it's operated, how a pilot flies it. While Boeings have the traditional yoke for the pilot, the Airbus A320 actually has a side joystick. And this is because the Boeing yoke and rudders are actually still connected to the flight controls, the ailerons, the elevator, the rudder, by cables and pulleys with some hydraulic motor assistance. The Airbus is all set electronically. There's a joystick sending information to the flight surfaces for those motors to move according to the inputs. In other words, when the pilot moves the joystick, the movements are converted to electronic signals, and flight control computers determine how to move the motors, the actuators at the control surfaces. There are some advantages to this fly-by-wire system, some weight savings, some faster, more efficient handling, computer-controlled flight envelopes to keep the airplane within certain safety margins. But of course, that's also one of the disadvantages with computer control. What happens when the computer messes up? Now we can be in a HAL from 2001, A Space Odyssey situation.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
The bottom line, the Airbus family of airliners are generally a fly-by-wire design compared to Boeing's, which are traditionally not. What happened that suddenly on the busiest weekend of air travel in the U.S. and some abroad, an emergency software rollback was ordered by Airbus? Well, here's where it stems from. On October 30th, in a story we reported on this channel, there was an Airbus A320 incident. JetBlue Flight 230 took off from Cancun, destined for Newark, New Jersey. This plane was the Airbus A320-200 series, and they reached their cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. Just after settling into cruise, suddenly the airplane pitched sharply down, nosedived, causing numerous injuries. The pilots reported to ATC flight control problems, and an emergency diversion to Tampa was made. A service difficulty report was submitted to the FAA indicating that the elevator aileron computer number 2 was faulty and issued an uncommanded pitch down. This uncommanded pitch down happened with the autopilot engaged, and an analysis traced the problem to software running a new L104 standard. Airbus has determined that under intense solar radiation, this configuration could allow corrupted data to reach flight control logic and drive unexpected elevator movement. In other words, what happened on that October 30th incident could happen again. On November 28, 2025, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, issued an Emergency Airworthiness Directive requiring A319, A320, and A321 operators to basically uninstall the L104 standard on the elevator aileron computer and revert to the earlier L103 Plus standard before the next flight. The emergency AD would allow for ferry flights but no passengers. Other agencies around the globe, including the FAA, mirrored the requirements right away. This AD affects about half of the A320 fleet, around 6,000 aircraft. Air France canceled 35 flights on Friday, November 28th, and other airlines faced some disruption. Now, on the face of it, this sounds huge. The entire A320 fleet grounded pending software rollback during the busy Thanksgiving holiday. I know that's a U.S. thing, but it does affect the rest of the world some as well. But in reality, this is not something that would ground 6,000 aircraft for a long period of time, causing massive disruptions. The work is about a 2 or 3 hour service, not requiring any major structural access and limited ground functionality tests to make sure it's all good to go. The procedure can fit into a long turn or an overnight. There are about 800 to 1,000 older A320 jets that might require a hardware refit, and that might turn into a bigger job, possibly grounding the plane for a day or more. I mean, this is a big deal, but it's not something to panic about. It's the biggest recall in Airbus history, but if you're traveling in the next few days, you might have no trouble, or you might get a few short delays. And in worst case, a flight here or there might be canceled. The operators are on top of the emergency AD and are doing a solid job to keep the jets flying and flying in a safe condition. American is already reporting on Saturday, November 29th, that it expects most of its A320 fleet to be back up and running. And Britain's EasyJet has said it's already completed the work on its A320s. If you're traveling anywhere in the world over the end of November, beginning of December, be sure to check your flight status. But overall, I don't think this is going to have a huge effect on air travel. As of this report, most of the disruption is over, and carriers have been getting back to normal. As for the future, I'm not sure how they're going to deal with solar radiation affecting computer software, and that's pretty scary. I don't really understand how a solar flare could be responsible for a command to nosedive an airliner. If you are a software engineer and you want to explain to me how that works in the comments below, I'd be interested to read it. That's our report. Thanks for watching. And thanks to our sponsors like Marshall Protective Services, MPSProtects.com. It's personal protection elevated. And if you haven't seen our recent report, check it out right here. Thanks to all those wishing me well as I've been traveling with this cold and cough. Remember, superior judgment trumps superior skill. Take care, everyone.